Hello, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and my guest today is Emmy award-winning choreographer Jeremy McQueen. He's one of our favorite guests. This is your third visit here. We can't get enough of you. And I'm saying choreographer, but you're also dancer, but you keep telling me, no, I'm not dancing. I'm only telling dancers what to do. I'm writing things for them. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
Great to see you, and you always have new projects. The first time you were here, we were talking about Black Iris, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about your company. Beautiful works, and also I did see you at the Emmys, right? When you were collecting an Emmy Award for a television project that you had. So
Yes.
congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Black Iris Project we started in 2016 as a call to action to diversify the narratives told through classical and contemporary ballet. Growing up in Southern California, when I was studying classical ballet, I was only really exposed to stories like Cinderella, Swan Lake, fantasies, fairy tales, fables, or stories that are rooted in European tradition, history. And after many years of dancing professionally and working on Broadway, I decided I wanted to somewhat be the change I wish to see in the world and create the type of ballets that I wish existed when I was a kid. So our collective creates original ballets that are rooted in Black history, Black culture, and the Black experience.
And the Emmy you won was for Wild.
It
right?
was.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, we created a four-part series called Wild, amplifying the voices of youth impacted by the juvenile justice system. It was a really incredible experience being able to amplify so many voices of Black and brown youth that have been impacted by the juvenile justice system for decades. And to be able to translate their words into movement and to also be able to showcase some of their stories audibly on stage was really, really heartwarming.
We're so excited about your new project called Blood in the Soil. Tell us about that.
Yes, when my father passed away in 2016, I subsequently inherited about 40 acres of rural farmland in southern Alabama that he had purchased prior to his moving to California in the 70s. I grew up in San Diego, California, never really having a strong connection to that land or to his kind of farm that he grew up on. But we would go back and visit. I usually hated it because it was so humid and sticky and lots of bugs, and there was no malls, there was no beach. But subsequently, when my father passed away, I started to take a deeper interest in wanting to know what this land was, rather than just quickly sell it off or give it away to another relative. I wanted to do a little bit of genealogy research. So I worked with the African American Smithsonian in DC, and they have a really incredible genealogy department where you can work with a genealogist for free to kind of trace your own roots and learn a little bit more about the family members that my father and his parents never really told me about. So Blood in the Soil is a tribute to not just my ancestors, but to Black and Indigenous farmers, agriculturalists, and stewards of land that have really poured their blood, sweat, and tears into making this country what it is today. And for me, I think it's really important for young people to understand what got us to this point where we are right now, in order to figure out how we can craft a pathway forward that's going to be healthy for us all.
And what in particular did you find out about your dad?
My dad always had a really intrinsic connection to soil. He didn't really want to be a gardener or a farmer himself, but when he moved to California, he became a professional florist. So one of the things that my dad always used to tell me as a little kid was that whenever he was feeling frustrated or depressed, he would say, I just need to go plant my hands in some soil. And as a kid in California, I had no idea what he was talking about. You want to go play with dirt in the backyard? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But as I got older, I started to understand his connection to soil was like his connection to his roots and his ancestors, and it provided him so much solace and comfort to be able to connect with the land in that way.
And you found some very interesting ancestors as well. Tell us.
I did.
Tell us about those.
I did. So I've come to discover that one of my ancestors is likely a man named Peter McQueen, who was an indigenous chief of the Muskogee Creek Indians in southern Alabama. Well, it wasn't southern Alabama at the time. But he was a mixed race between Scottish and Indigenous, and he led a very historic battle against Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson,
Yes.
right, who was moving all of the Native Americans.
Yes,
hither and yon.
he was opposing the colonization of the land and fought a really historic battle during the War of 1812. Subsequently, Andrew Jackson ended up winning and colonizing the land and pushing all of the indigenous people west of the Mississippi River. But it was so interesting to be able to find a connection not only to the name, but also to the area where the land that my father owns is. And the land that he owned was right next door to where he grew up. So to find the McQueen bloodline so intrinsically herited, deeply rooted rather, in that area, in that land, provided me a really interesting source of inspiration.
And so the ballet, though, which we understand is going to be at Judson soon, is telling the story of your father and your mother. We have a clip I'd like to show, if we can,
Sure.
of some of these beautiful, and you can tell us what. I just fell in love with your description of what we're looking at.
Sure. So there's a number of different movements in the ballet. We've written the ballet like a abstract sonnet of sorts. I worked with an Alabama-based composer named Brian Neighbors, who just is an incredible genius in bringing this heartfelt ballet to life. The ballet is or this section rather, is loosely inspired by my parents' great migration to California. My parents met in Alabama when they were in college at Alabama State University. My mom originally from Montgomery, my dad from small town Castleberry. And in 1977, when they got married, my dad had this dream and vision to leave the Jim Crow South and to try to go to California and live a different life, one very different than the one that they previously experienced growing up. And my mom had only been on a plane once before in her life, but she trusted him and said, okay, if this is what you want to do, we're in this together. So this ballet movement really kind of talks about the yin-yang aspect of working together, supporting one another. There were times where my father had to really support my mom in that transition, and there were times when my mom really had to support my dad as he was struggling to find work or find his footing in California. But together they worked as a unit in order to make their dreams become realities. And so this ballet, this section of the ballet really just kind of pays tribute to their resilience and their tenacity of working together despite the challenges and whatnot that they faced.
Oh, it's lovely. Absolutely lovely. And you also talk about the Equal Justice Institute, your visit there, Brian Stevenson's remarkable work concentrating on lynching. Tell us about that. Apparently that had a huge impact on you as an individual and the work.
Yes, absolutely. I would go to Montgomery every now and then for holidays to visit family and relatives, but this one particular trip that I took in 2019 after the EGI had just opened was really monumental for me. Being able to go into the Equal Justice Initiative's Legacy Museum and see not only the incredible portraits that were there talking about men and women incarcerated across the country and the history of lynching in this country, I also stumbled upon this incredible collection of soil that was gathered from all different places throughout the South in memorial to several people who had been lynched throughout the South. And so it was...
And were they in jars when you went? Because before the institute was officially open, they started collecting them in jars,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
and to my knowledge, they're still collecting soil, but to be able to see the vastly different colors. The color that stood out the most to me was the rich red clay soil. And that reminded me of like blood, thinking of the blood that could be deeply embedded in the soil from those that have passed away, that have been buried, or those that have been lynched, or those that have purely just pricked their fingers while picking cotton. there's just so much history and so much knowledge that's deeply rooted in the soil.
Right.
And so all of that inspired me to want to honor our ancestors and honor my family and the history of that land.
Oh, it's incredible. Well, I'm from Lowndes County, Alabama, not far from the land that you're talking about here. So I know it. I know it well. But you worked on this. Took some doing. How many years did you work on this project?
I started doing the research in 2016. All of the ballets that I create, I love to take a really scholarly approach to them, doing a lot of interviews and research. So over the past 3 years in particular, I've been interviewing almost 40 different Black and Indigenous farmers and agriculturalists to learn a little bit more about their connection to soil and what keeps them going despite the frequent injustices within the agricultural field. But I consider these ballets a labor of love. They take a long time to create, and fundraising is always really challenging.
Oh yeah, there's always that, right?
When you're creating,
the creation, the fundraising, right?
Absolutely, it's hard. So it takes a while to come to life. But I'm excited to break ground with this ballet in November.
Right, and talk to us about working with the composer. How do you do that in terms of, is it movement first and then the music is provided? How?
I like to work music first, actually, and I love being able to collaborate and have the composer also offer their input and their own history. So for this ballet, given that it's just so deeply rooted in Alabama, I wanted to find a Black classical composer from Alabama, and he's from Birmingham, Brian Neighbors, and he's currently professor at LSU, and just a really incredible person. But we have a lot of conversations back and forth talking about both of our histories. His family also has a history in agriculture, and so being able to kind of compare and contrast stories while meditating on our own personal research, we then, I give him time to just kind of let his inspiration flourish and come up with music. But it's been, like I said, a huge labor of love and a privilege to work with him. The score itself is an hour long. It took us at least a year and a half to even develop that because we wanted to make sure that it was full and robust and really hinkered down on what Mother Nature or what the land is trying to tell us and being able to share that.
Yeah, and you and I were just talking before we started the taping of this show about Alabama farmers or Black farmers nationally across this country who for years had been discriminated against. Your research unearthed, I think, some elements of that as well.
So sad that despite the years and years that have passed since our people were enslaved and then became sharecroppers, that less than 1% of Black farmers own land in this country, whereas 95% of the agricultural land that's owned is owned by white farmers. And so just understanding a little bit more just of the injustices from even having land theft, land taken away from families, not having a will, and then suddenly banks and other companies coming in to find ways to take that land away from Black hands has just been so incredibly sad.
Well, you were very lucky that your land stayed in the family. We know that in some instances, there's the urge to, to sell. I mean, that happened a lot. So it's terrific that it's stayed in your family and that you decided to keep it. And you had an idea once when you were younger, you wanted to turn it into what? An amusement center? Or
yeah, I was such a brat as a kid growing up, going to Alabama, because here I am, in this rural town with pigs and chickens and you name it, and all I could think about was just wanting to be home near the beach. And my dad used to tell me.
You were spoiled. You wanted to go back to California and the beach?
My parents would say I was loved. They wouldn't say I was spoiled. But yeah, I told my dad after he had said, one day all of this land will be yours. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I said, the only thing I can think of to do with it is to make an amusement park. So my ideas and concepts of what to do with the land has vastly changed since I was a young kid, and especially while doing this project, being able to find ways to open opportunities for other local individuals that have an interest in farming or in agriculture, while also being able to perhaps use the land to create like an artist residency space where
Yeah.
Black artists can come and create.
Is this you and your baby pig?
This is my grandfather's farm, which is right next door. My grandfather owned about nearly 300 acres of land, and until he passed away, he had pigs and whatnot, and this was one of the trips where I went, and I was just like, ugh, I don't want to get dirty.
You look very happy, you know, right? And what are you planning to do with your 40 acres?
That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But I do have the dream to one day create an artist residency where artists from all over the country, particularly Black artists, can come and have a space to retreat. There's something really beautiful about being in the South, particularly in rural areas where it's just so quiet. Where you can break away from the busy city life and just really start to hear your own voice and hear the voices of your family and your ancestors, and you can create a little bit more holistically than how it is here in the concrete jungle of New York City.
That's an excellent use of your 40 acres. I think that is terrific. So I'm looking forward to your plunking them right in the middle of Alabama, right, where they won't be distracted by, you know, the noise. And speaking of distraction, I want to talk about the focus of Black dancers now. How do you assess where we are in terms of opportunity? We've talked about this in both previous recordings that we've done for Black America. In 2024, are things any better? Or no, you're shaking your head no?
We still got work to do, Carol. I mean, in 2020, we saw just a huge surge of performative solidarity, a performative way of amplifying voices and wanting to provide opportunities to Black individuals and organizations that perhaps may not have had those opportunities in the past. But even with my organization in the past 4 years, we've seen a significant dip in just funding opportunities, performing opportunities. There's so much going on in the world right now with just the somewhat looming recession and the high cost of inflation that some people are slipping back into old habits. And so in terms of what I hope for in moving forward in the ballet industry is that there will be more organizations that are developed similar to my own, creating the change and being the change that we wish to see in the world rather than just waiting for ancient organizations like American Ballet Theater or New York City Ballet to change and evolve, which historically they've been slow to do, and sadly there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and we often talk about, you and I, about the Black dancer, the Black male dancer, and the particular walls that exist there.
Yeah, the ways in which our bodies are almost idolized, but at the same time villainized. In ballet in particular, I had a hard time struggling with eating disorders growing up in the ballet world because I was constantly told that my ballet was insufficient for the type of work that I wanted to do. And so I constantly looked at the pictures of the male principal ballet dancers that often didn't look like me, and I tried to do things to make my body look like that, even though genetically Black people are just a bit more curvy, you know, have a little bit more sauce to what we bring to the table. And with my organization, the Black Iris Project, we're really very conscious of making sure that we're not perpetuating just really awful stereotypes that have been so entrenched within ballet history for years. So we're looking at ways that we can just deconstruct the language and the narrative and the rhetoric behind classical ballet and be able to create anew.
Right, and how many dancers do you have in your company? How many are lucky enough to have somebody like you saying, you're great, your body looks fine, here, do this?
We have a revolving door of dancers. So really my policy is I want to work with people who want to work with me. We are a grassroots organization. We are not a multi-million-dollar company by any means yet. But you know, I really want to work with people that want to do the work that we're doing. And so over the years, we've worked with probably 250 different dancers.
That is amazing,
from all different companies across the country.
Right. Well, 200 dancers that you've had an impact on, you know, given them opportunities and created for them and all. And in terms of blood in the soil, what's the ultimate takeaway from that you want people to get?
I want them to understand how our past impacts our present and our future moving forward. Living in New York City, young kids don't often have the opportunities to venture out into nature, or especially the idea of watching something grow from seed to harvest. My partner this season has had a community plot in a community garden, and being able to watch those tomatoes and callaloo and all these different things grow from seed has just been so beautiful. It really teaches us about the human spirit and the patience, the tenacity that it takes to be able to become this flourishing being that is hopefully abundant and just giving and full of nutrients that can be shared with other people.
Oh, that's so beautiful. You're a poet too, right? You're a poet. What are you working on next, and how long do you this is the way it is. Yeah, great. This is terrific, Jeremy. Now what's next?
I'm working on fundraising for our organization. Honestly, it's just so hard to be able to sustain our organization, or just Black artists in general. We really have a hard time finding opportunities to let our voices flourish. So aside from working with Black Iris Project and trying to grow that, I'm always looking for opportunities outside of my organization to continue to sharpen my skills as a creative director, choreographer, director, and movement maker.
So, and movie making?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely plan to continue to increase our accessibility by being able to create more dance films and being able to showcase more stories across more screens.
And do you think that that is, I mean, all of the streaming possibilities that there are now, I mean, is that an open window for you all to create content?
Absolutely. Prior to the pandemic, where streaming content became something of the norm, it was really a mission of mine to find ways to make our works more accessible and affordable to audiences. It can be kind of expensive for organizations to be able to bring us in on tour to become and perform a work live, and so I wanted to find ways that we could film the work to create both stage and film adaptations of the same work, so that we can get it into classrooms and people can start to learn a little bit more about Black history, Black culture, Black experience, and see themselves in a different light. So I am hopeful for opportunities to work with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, because I feel we need to see more of our stories specifically told through ballet across all platforms.
Well, this is the perfect one for it. I mean, this has everything, all of the research that you did and the beautiful dancing and music as well. This is just wonderful. So tell us about where people can buy tickets and where people can send their checks and all of that. We've got to keep Jeremy McQueen dancing and choreographing.
Thank you. Everyone can go and visit blackirisproject.org. There we have information about the premiere of Blood in the Soil taking place on November 15th at Judson Memorial Church in the West Village. And you can, if you aren't able to join us in November, you can always go to our website and make a tax-deductible donation, which truly helps support our institution to be able to make more prolific works like this one.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Write those checks, go to the website, go to the ballet. It's going to be fabulous. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
Jeremy McQueen, thanks so much for being with us today. The founding artistic director of the Black Iris Project. 200 dancers who had this impact. It's really amazing. And that's it for us at this time. Thanks to you for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. We will see you the next time. And now you can download the CUNY TV app in your Apple Store or in Google Play and find us there.